Somewhere in a parallel universe 2,000 years ago, there was a society called Timidithia. Timidithia was home to a population of 3 million organisms of the same species called timids. Timids had all the same characteristics of a human being: blood, skin, organs, mouths, eyes. But the big difference between timids and the organisms we commonly refer to as humans is their backbone, or rather, lack thereof. Timids had no spinal structure. They were somehow still able to walk around and function as normal citizens, but their body contorted and never stayed rigid unless they complied with the rules of Timidithia. Long ago, before any living timid could even remember, very powerful people with large amounts of wealth came together to instill a set of beliefs and ideals into the society of Timidithia. Some of the beliefs were as follows: never speak up unless someone asks you to. Do not be disagreeable. Do not take risks. Smile and agree with everyone you meet. And don't make decisions so readily. If you followed these beliefs, which were basically laws, the governing force of Timidithia would activate your spinal tech, a small piece of hardware soldered to every timid's back when they first came out of the womb. When activated, it would create an artificial spine for the timid, and as a result, they could participate in many more activities that humans like us do that require our spine, like running, playing sports, or almost any job that requires physical labor. There were, of course, humans who chose to not follow the rules, but they represented a very small minority. That was because many essential places, like grocery stores and most jobs, required you to have your spinal tech activated upon entry. And because the rebels were so frowned upon by everyone else for deciding to stand up for themselves and the law, they were cast to the outskirts of Timidithia, away from almost any regular contact with other timids. Hey, Drongo, you there, man? Drongo, a 20-year-old man from Timidithia, slowly opened his eyes. He had accidentally dozed off at his desk during another 12-hour night shift. Oh, good, so you are awake. Come on, man, we still have 3 more hours on this shift. You know they'd turn off your spinal tech if they caught you slacking. The man speaking was Mungro, Drongo's closest friend in and out of work. It was extremely difficult to find real friends in Timidithia because everyone was a people pleaser and would never speak up, even if they didn't like what someone did. This caused mass untrustworthiness between the timids, but that untrustworthiness was swept under the rug. Sorry about poking your shoulder. I didn't mean to get on your bad side. I mean, it wasn't really your bad side, right? Man, I knew I shouldn't have said anything. I'm so sorry. It's alright, Mungro, Drongo said. No hard feelings. You were right to wake me up. So I wasn't out of line? No, it's okay. No harm, no foul. These were how conversations usually went in Timidithia. Even the slightest act of speaking up against what someone was doing, even if the thing they were doing would cause that person harm in the long run, would not be brought up by others. Because confrontation didn't exist and was seen as extremely wrong. Drongo and Mungro worked at the Spinal Corp factory, the corporation that made spinal techs. They were software engineers who programmed new and improved versions of the spinal tech. As Drongo snapped back to his work, he looked at his computer screen. He was in the middle of writing lines of code that he was programming into the next generation of spinal tech. If Timid disagrees with someone, temporarily shut off spinal tech. If Timid says yes to a command, keep spinal tech on, reward with mini massage. If Timid asserts themselves, shut off spinal tech for 24 hours. If Timid tries to improve their skills to stand out, shut off spinal tech for 2 days. Drongo felt the pain in his chest light up every time he typed another one of these commands into his keyboard. His intuition would tell him that being a coward, complying, and saying yes to everything even when he didn't believe in it wasn't right, but he was too afraid to do anything other than what was requested of him. He could only imagine the awful punishment he'd get for trying to speak up and suggest a different type of programming. They'd probably turn off his spinal tech for at least half a year. Eventually, Drongo finished the code he had to complete that night, said goodbye to Mungro, and got straight into his bed around 3 a.m. He had a big next day ahead of him. When Drongo woke up around 10, he instinctively checked his phone for the latest news. Some of the article headlines he scrolled through were: How to Say Yes, the fundamental guide to not making anyone upset. Why being indecisive and unassertive leads to true confidence. Shrink yourself. Why going after what you want and standing out only leads to pain. In the back of his mind, Drongo knew these headlines were leaving him and the other timids in a state of illusion, but he was too strapped into this trance-like state of reservedness to notice. The one positive about Timidithia was that conflict was essentially non-existent. Because everyone was so quick to remain quiet upon any possible complaint or disagreement, crime was merely a concept rather than a reality. After about a half hour of scrolling, Drongo got up and started getting ready for his big day. As he tried buttoning up his shirt, the bottom of it wrapped tightly around his belly, and the second-to-last button broke off and flung across the room. He slowly directed his gaze upwards towards the mirror. Drongo was morbidly obese, weighing in at 350 pounds. And by the event that just took place, it seemed it was only getting worse. Drongo knew he had a problem, but he was too afraid to awaken his inner confidence. He was scared to impose the assertiveness on himself that he knew he needed because he had been conditioned to follow the rules, never speak negatively even if it's truthful, and to always be satisfied. As Drongo left his apartment and started his drive, his disdain towards his appearance wore off, and a smile started to appear on his face. That's because he was on his way to his first date in over 2 years. He met the woman on a dating app, and the good, friendly conversation eventually led to them planning the date. Although Drongo was fearful of the thought that the conversation only went well because the woman was just being agreeable and nice due to her spinal tech, he was still hopeful. They both arrived at the restaurant and sat down in a booth. "What do you think you'll order?" the woman said. I don't know. I don't know which will be best. There's so much to choose from, you know? And what if I end up not liking what I choose? Ugh, this is so hard." The woman visibly cringed at Drongo's indecisiveness, but he was too busy looking down, twiddling his thumbs to notice. "I totally get it. No problem," she said. "Take your time." Eventually, they got their food, and after some general small talk, the woman asked Drongo, "So, what are you looking for in a relationship?" "Oh, well, I don't know," Drongo said. "Whatever you like is good with me. I'll be fine with whatever you want. I just want us to get along and for you to be happy, you know? I would never want to do anything you didn't want to do. Don't you agree?" After a long, awkward pause, she let out a small, quiet exhale. Drongo wasn't sure if she was trying to hide a chuckle or if she was secretly annoyed. "Yeah, totally. I agree," she said. The date continued on for the next hour, and they went back and forth just like this. When it was time to leave, Drongo walked her to her car and said, "I had an amazing time. Do you want to see me again? It's okay if you don't, but it'd be cool if you did." She looked at him and smiled. "Yeah, definitely. I'll see when I'm free again. See ya." A week passed by, and almost every day, Drongo asked the woman if she wanted to have a second date. And every time, the woman wouldn't give him a straight answer in an effort to not be disagreeable. It was always, "I'm sure I can soon, but I'll have to get back to you." Drongo had no idea that the woman had no intention of meeting with him again and was completely unattracted to his fearful, shy, indecisive, and unassertive nature. But she couldn't tell him that because then that hurt his feelings and her spinal tech would surely shut off. This is why genuine love was nearly impossible to find in Timidithia. Because everyone was trying to appeal to the other person, and so many people took advantage of this, nobody trusted each other nor respected each other. Everyone had virtually the same personality, and this feeling of silent bitterness loomed over the entire society. Another 3 weeks and 5 extra pounds later, Drongo got an email from his supervisor explaining a completely different type of assignment. Some of the spinal techs on the people at the outskirts of Timidithia were acting up, and they wanted Drongo to bring his computer and debug them. They gave him directions to get there, since it wasn't listed on any electronic maps, and told him to get there later that day. As he made his way through a part of town that he had never even seen before, he eventually arrived at the outskirts. When Drongo arrived in the outskirts, he quickly realized that the directions his supervisor gave him were extremely ambiguous. But he was too afraid to tell his supervisor that at the thought of potentially getting on his bad side. Suggesting an improvement, even if it might offend someone's ego, was frowned upon. So he decided to find the building they had told him to go to on his own. He rummaged through the desolate outskirts, filled with spinal techs broken beyond repair, run-down buildings, and muddy roads. And out of the corner of his eye, he spotted some sort of glowing light hidden under some rubble. His curiosity got the best of him, and he decided to investigate. When he moved the rubble and scraps out of the way, he found an inconspicuous door that looked like it led down to a bunker of some sort. He looked behind him and from side to side. No one was around, and he hadn't had the opportunity to do something this exhilarating in years. So, he decided to make his way in. After walking down a long tunnel with vines hanging down from different parts in the ceiling and water dripping through the cracks, he reached an open underground fortress. And in the middle was a strange-looking figure. It had on baggy leather pants and a ripped-up tank top. Its back was large, wide, and muscular. By Timidithia's standards, it looked like a total freak of nature. When Drongo looked at the figure's back where the spinal tech should be soldered, he could not see it there. And yet, the figure was standing upright, with full spinal support. Hello there, Drongo said. The figure turned around. Drongo could tell it was a timid, probably in his late 50s. How did you find this place? The man said. Oh, I'm sorry, Well, I saw a glowing light coming from a pile of rubble, and I wanted to see what it was. I'm sorry for disturbing you. I'll be going now. Wait a second. You didn't disturb me. It's nice to see another timid for the first time in 30 years. What? What do you mean? Said Drongo. I bet the first thing you noticed was that I have no spinal tech, wasn't it? Yes, sir. And that's why I'm wondering how you managed to stand upright. But it's okay. You don't have to tell me. The man laughed. Spoken like a true timid. You really don't have any backbone, kid. Listen, my name is Wagro. I used to be a regular citizen like you, following all the laws of Timidithia, until I accidentally found out the evil truth behind the Spinal Tech Corporation. When I was your age, I worked as an employee at the Spinal Tech Corp in the hardware distribution center. During an overnight shift, I stumbled across a group of dudes in suits, so I decided to see where they were headed. I followed them until they went into a big conference room, and I stood outside, just close enough so that I could hear them. Amongst the small talk, I heard one of them say, "These dumbasses are really still brainwashed by our spinal tech. Man, I'm so glad we don't have to use that bullshit. Controlling these people is a hell of a time." I was shocked. Could the entire idea behind needing a spinal tech have been a lie? That night, when I got home, I spent a few hours disarming my spinal tech and detaching it from my body. I called a buddy over to tell him the information I had heard, and he was in complete denial. I don't know if that's true, but I'm certainly not going to disagree or agree with you, he said. I responded with, "Why don't you grow a pair, man? Why don't you form your own opinion for once and stand by it? I'm sick of this conformity crap just to people please." As I was slumped over in my chair without my spinal tech to support me, the contortion of my body slowly started to fix itself naturally. I was stunned. Had we been lied to this whole time? Was there another way to grow a spine that had been hidden from us? I soon realized that the answer had lied in my previous statements. There was another way for timids to have spinal structure, a much more natural way that existed long before evil corporations succeeded in getting everyone to comply with the technology. And it lied in starting to stand up for yourself. I had tested this theory on several people whom I thought were trustworthy, but even after seeing the results of my spine growing more and more upright without my spinal tech, they were still in denial, because they didn't have the courage to not be. Eventually, the Spinal Corp found out about my discovery, and they hired a task force to try and take me down so the information could not get out to the public. And so, I had to escape, and I've been in this hideout in the outskirts ever since. Drongo felt his own denial start to kick in, but in an effort to remain on this curious path, he nervously asked the man, "So, what is the truth then?" The man looked him dead in the eyes. "That you'll never have a true permanent spine. You will always be spineless, no matter how much that hunk of metal on your back convinces you you aren't. Unless you do what Timidithia condemns. The truth is, we are all born with remnants of the beginning of a spine, right near our brains. And the more you act the way I acted towards my peers before I had to hide down here, the more that it grows. And once it does grow, it's permanent. unlike your spinal tech. Drongo still couldn't believe it, but he felt his eyes lock onto this man in a way he had never experienced. It was the first time he was ever not afraid to make eye contact. It was like he had finally uncovered a new power within himself. "Okay, I'm listening now. I'm willing to learn." "Good. Now you're starting to sound sane." The first thing you need to do is to stop complying with everything. If you know you don't like something, and you know intuitively that it is not right for yourself, even if it will piss some people off, you need to stop doing it. Your whole life has been predicated on making other people happy, and as a result, you've made nobody happy, especially yourself. They won't tell you this, but timids can feel when you're being disingenuous just to please them, and they will respect you less because of it. And it's no wonder you're over 300 pounds. None of your so-called friends, or anybody for that matter, has the assertiveness to tell you that you're slowly killing yourself, and you can't admit to yourself that you have a problem. Drongo was especially taken back by this comment, but instead of being upset, he was overjoyed. Someone finally spoke up and told him the truth behind his problem. "The next thing you need to do," the man said, "is to stop letting other people take advantage of you. Nobody likes a pushover. If you're always available and ready to fall on your knees for anybody's favor, you lack any sort of self-esteem. When you try to please everybody, you please nobody. And you'll never be able to make true friends because you won't know who is just using you for your niceness or who likes you for who you are. And if you are an avid people pleaser, which you are, there really is no you, because your personality blends into whoever you're with. Start being more decisive with your actions. You can analyze every possible outcome to every potential decision, but in the end, you'll never know for sure what'll happen. And it is much less productive to think of the outcome of every possible decision just so you can potentially make a better decision than to just make a decision more readily, even if the more readily made decision turns out to be unfavorable. You don't even know who you are because you have no real opinions. You just agree with everyone you're with because you're convinced the only way people will like you is if you get on your knees for them. But the paradoxical thing is, the more you value your own time and learn to say no when you need to with somebody and you establish boundaries with others, the more they will respect you. Now, don't get it mistaken. There's a huge difference between not being a shy, fearful people pleaser and being a straight up asshole. If you randomly bump into a person on the road, you should apologize instead of saying, "Move, motherfucker." And you shouldn't start to neglect other people entirely or not be kind to others, but you do need to stand up for yourself when you're being disrespected, walk your own path regardless of what anyone says or thinks, and keep your head held high. You might temporarily hurt someone's feelings because of this, but you will permanently improve the life of yourself and the person's feelings you hurt in the long run. I've now given you all the information you need with which to grow a real spine. So, what will you do? Will you choose to stay blended in, follow the rules of Timidithia, and let other people control your life? Or will you make the first courageous act of your life and assert yourself, go after what you want, and not be so agreeable so others can't push you around? The choice is yours. Thank you guys very much for watching another one of my short stories, and thank you to all the patrons on this channel on Patreon. If you don't know what this is, it's a platform separate from YouTube where I'm putting out exclusive content. You can talk to me one-on-one over there, link in the description. If you like these short stories that I do on my channel that provide life lessons, check out this one. You'll love it, and I'm signing off. Peace, guys. Go check out this video. Love ya. Bye.